I just felt like I needed to be so much more. And, I feel like I went into a big, like, kind of panic mode about, like, am I going to be ready to take care of this child and be the person that they look up to?
Yeah, no, 100%. I can definitely relate to that because this video is kindly sponsored by Read Mentor School, which are an online independent Muslim school for children aged 6 to 16, where you can get the British National Curriculum full-time education alongside your Islamic values and Islamic studies. Do check them out on readmentorschool.com. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to the Dadhood podcast. This is the Muslim Fathers podcast where we bring on Muslim fathers to speak about their journey when it comes to fatherhood. And today we've got a guest that is not necessarily known for being a father in the public space or anything, but more so known to be using his words and being a wordsmith, being a poet, but has recently released a book that touches upon his reflections and his sort of ideas surrounding marriage, relationships, and parenthood as well. So we're bringing on Suli Breaks, or Brother Daryl, onto the podcast today, and he's going to be able to share with us a few opinions. So welcome to the podcast, bro. How are you doing?
I'm good, Ak. I'm good. I'm good. Alhamdulillah. I can't complain. Thank you for having me here. It's a pleasure to be speaking with you. You know what I mean? And just chop it up as dads. Talk about the pains, the struggles, and the joys of it all.
That's it. That's it. Really appreciate you coming on. All right. There's a question that we always ask our guests when they come on the podcast, and we start from here, which is, when did you become a father, and how many children do you have?
Okay, so I became a father on December 25th, 2017. That was 7 years ago, and I have two children. And so one is 7 and the other one is 2 years old.
Mashallah, mashallah, amazing. You got a 7-year-old and a 2-year-old. Okay, take me back to 2017 then, in December when your first one was being born. What were you feeling at that time? Was it a moment of joy? Was it a moment of anxiety? Was it a mixture of a few different things?
Um, I can quite December 2017, I can quite unequivocally say that when I found out, it was a moment of kind of like overwhelm. It was overwhelm, which was like initially like overwhelm of joy. In the sense that, oh, me and my wife, we finally got to the stage in our relationship where we're going to be having children, building a family. But then I think as the reality sunk in and it started to get closer, I started to get more and more anxious. And I don't know where the anxiousness came from, but there was this kind of restlessness of me to be like, oh, I'm not where I need to be a father. And that wasn't even just like, for most people, it's always like maybe from a financial standpoint, or like just a provision standpoint. But for me, it was on a very just like, just status where I was in life. I just felt like I needed to be so much more to be the father. And so I started feeling like everything needed to be accelerated. And I feel like I went into a big, like, kind of panic mode about, like, am I going to be ready to take care of this child and be the person that they look up to?
Yeah, no, 100%. I can definitely relate to that because you're excited about you're so joyful about the fact that you've got this child that you can bring into the world, and you've got these ideas and these conceptions of what it's going to be like bringing up a child. But there's that feeling of, well, am I really going to live up to that reality that I see in maybe other fathers or my parents or relatives, or
Mm.
am I really going to be able to live up to those expectations? Because I know my own flaws, right? I know who I
Yeah.
am, and I know where I fall short. And so are those things gonna start to play up and act out when he comes in or she comes into my life? Is a boy or girl? Your two
Boy,
young
I got
ones.
two boys. Two boys. Yeah,
Two
I got
boys.
two boys. Yeah.
Two boys. Amazing, amazing. So you're waiting for that moment of having a daughter, inshallah.
I don't know. Inshallah, I don't know right now. I don't know if I'm ready for that. Two right now. Two right now is kicking my ass. Like, I'll tell you that for free, man.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask you. So as you kept going within your fatherhood journey, you said it started off with overwhelm, but how have things panned out since then? Do you feel like the overwhelm has stayed the same? Do you feel like things have sort of mellowed down and you've become comfortable in your position as being a father? Or do you feel like actually things just keep changing all the time?
There's a mixture of both, in it. It's like I'm starting to feel like I'm confident in my ability to not just be a father, but in learning the role of a father. You know, I think that's the hardest thing because you never really get it. But the biggest fear is like, can I adjust to learn to become a father? And you're like, what if I don't have the capacity to do that? You know, so I feel like I've got more confidence in my ability to handle him at different stages and the boys as they grow up. But the first time when you leave the hospital and you have the little creature in your hand, and then you go, you know, you take him home, my heart is just beating. Like, you know, I'm just watching him, and is he awake? Is he sleeping? Is he not? Is he too hot? Is he too cold? You know, I was very I was very in hindsight, I'm very conscious that I was very afraid of my inability to keep on like learning to be a father. So I think now with the second one, although you have two, you have more confidence in your ability to get through the stages. Obviously, because you've done it once already, you know, you have that experience that you can draw back on, but also because your capacities are growing as well when you're understanding more about children and you're around more people with children and, you know, just have a completely different perspective.
Yeah, 100%. I definitely see that too in myself. Is there will always be this little bit of doubt of whether you're being the best father that you can be. But experience is the best teacher, right? Like as time goes on, you can only become more and more sure of your abilities, and there's certain things that you can never control, right? There's certain things
Yeah.
you have to kind of let go. And in my journey, of wanting to become this ideal father, it was always a reaction of, like I've mentioned many times this podcast, I didn't grow up with my father. And so it was always a reaction of,
Oh.
can I be the father that I didn't have? Can I be the best father? Can I be the
Mm.
father that when I look at and I have a good relationship with him right now, but if I look back at what happened before in the past and where things went wrong, how can I improve on that? How can I make sure that doesn't happen to my children? So at the beginning, it was always like reacting to my own situation, reacting
Yeah.
to my past.
Yeah.
And it wasn't really me looking forward in a positive way, like who I am, what abilities I have, what can I bring forth. It was always just, let me make sure this doesn't happen and that doesn't happen. So I
Yeah,
had
you're
to
in defensive mode. Yeah.
learn to flip that script and actually be present in the moment and know, all right, I need to make sure I'm here and I'm doing this, not as a reaction, but as being here right now for my children.
Right. So what age did you like then reconnect with your father then?
So I reconnected with him. So my mom and dad split up when I was around maybe 1 or 2 years old. So I
Oh
only managed to
wow.
reconnect with him when I was like 23, 24.
Oh, so you really didn't grow up with him at
I
all?
really didn't. And there was no connection in between that time. There was no chance for me to be able to see him because there was a big like court case and everything like that.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, see, I can't even imagine because with me, I grew up with, I can safely say that I grew up with my dad. Although he spent a lot of time in Ghana, like, you know, like immigrant parents, like I don't even get your background, but he was kind of like back and forth between here and Ghana, innit? So
Right.
it's like he spent a lot of extended periods away, you know, and I just be with either my mom and stuff, but he was a very big influence on my life, you know? So also, although I had that to kind of draw from, there was parts of me that was also like, can I live up to some of the things that he did for me? Versus, and then there was the other side of, oh, he did this, I don't want to do this. So it's like
Yeah.
battling those two. But you had a completely like no reference. I can imagine your mind was like a blank slate, which makes it kind of harder because your biggest fears just kind of manifest over and over
Exactly.
again.
Exactly. Exactly. And that was part of the reason why I started the podcast as well, is because, I felt like surely there's other people that have been in my situation where they didn't grow up with their father and they're becoming fathers and they're probably thinking, how do I go about this? And if they can find something online that they can relate to and they can see, oh, actually, there's these guys, they're talking about being a dad. They've got, this guy, I've brought in brothers who have 6 children, 7 children. Okay, let's see from that
See,
experience. I've brought in
yeah,
brothers who literally their baby's just been born and they've talked about the experience of pregnancy only. So
yeah.
trying to get different perspectives, and that boy who has no frame of reference, now he has a full frame of reference, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So that's the idea. But so on that, I actually wanted to ask you, um, so growing up with your father, and like you said, he was going back and forth to Ghana and stuff like that. So in your experience, how much of what you've learned from your father growing up and what you see of your father as this is a what a typical father looks like in your community, your culture, how much of that has affected the way that you now father your children?
Yeah, I think I think that's a good question because I think the biggest thing I really learned from my dad, it wasn't really, it was ideology. It was the way he taught me to see the world. You know, my dad, like, from the youngest age, he was always like a reader and he was always like a philosopher, you know, and he was always searching. So most of my family is not Muslim, but he was the first one to kind of like come to like look into Islam and come to Islam, you know. So he's always been like a very kind of like thinker. And because that's what he prided and that's what our conversations were about, I can definitely see it in how it's manifested in my relationship with my son, you know, because if we're always talking right now, it's a lot of like comics and books and all this stuff, but it's always like thinking theoretically, you know, and because then he'll go and play football and I'll be like, bro, he needs to be better at football, but it's like that's not what we spend most of our time doing, in it. Like we're reading and we're talking and you know, and so I think I got a lot of for me, I really realized that a father is really going to shape the way you view the world and the way you approach the world from a mental standpoint before you even look at it physically and all that kind of stuff. So I think I was really, really keen on imparting that on my son. Like, have a broad mind, study, learn, you know, not just educationally, but observe the world and try and decipher it.
How do you practically do that with a 7-year-old?
I think you encourage their enthusiasm to kind of like learn about the things that you know, like the things that they enjoy. You know, everything he wants to do, I'm actively like, oh, you know, you can go on Google and you can search that, or you can go on YouTube and you can teach yourself how to do that. You know, I'm actively very like proactive, encouraging him to be like, there's enough, and it gets frustrating to the point because then he learns so much about things that, and he'll ask me and I don't know about them, and it's random things like Pokemon or something, you know what I mean? And he's got like a whole encyclopedia about it, but you know, but I like to encourage him to do that because then he becomes explorative in his mind.
That's amazing. And so, drawing on that now, in terms of your experience with your father, obviously you've taken a path, a very creative path, on the various different types of media that you produce, whether as well as us books, that's videos, etc., etc. Did any of that come from your upbringing, or is that a path that you sort of carved out for yourself as you sort of got older?
I think from a logistical standpoint, like I did it myself in the sense that finding YouTube, learning the medium of spoken word, all that kind of stuff. But I think the seed of it was definitely planted. I was writing something about this on my newsletter, talking about my dad then, you know, and when I was young, I remember he made movies. He shot two films, you know, in Ghana. You know, they weren't great movies, but in hindsight, it wasn't great movies. But in hindsight, you know, and recently, like he wrote a book. Like he was always thinking of his goal is like he wants to be like, I'm gonna be a multi-mega millionaire. But his thing is he says that his philosophy is that I just don't have the patience to be successful because I like to start things, but when the money doesn't come, I get bored in it. But so so you can imagine growing up with someone who always had like a new idea or new invention. So he'd come and he'd be like, guys, I've just invented this, you know, and he'll
Yeah.
spend like hours tinkering with it, and he'll be like, look, and then a week later he'd be like, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, you know. So he was always very like creative in his mindset. And even the business ventures always and have always been very creative, you know. So I think that was definitely instilled in him by me, but instilled in me by him looking retrospectively. Just the idea of being creative. And I'll be honest, sometimes he didn't imply his creativity the most productive ways. He got himself a bit of trouble with the law and stuff, but it was still that, you know, that creative mindset.
Yeah, that's amazing. It's like the seed was planted. It's not like he had to hold your hand and tell you this is what you should be doing or this is how to do it, but you just being able to see in him that he's created these things or he was a creative individual, planted the seed in you. And this is something that I think, as fathers, is something that we should be conscious of, is that our children see us doing greatness or being involved in greatness. It's not that we have to force them into the path that we're
No.
in, or we have to hold their hand and tell them this is what you need to do. But they should be able to see us doing something. Like, even if we take it from, let's say, from a religious angle, if they see us praying or they see us reading the Quran or they see us take it seriously to go and attend the mosque,
Yeah.
without us even having to tell them, that's something that gets planted in them, that if dad takes this thing seriously, I will take it seriously as well.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. And I've always said that I think you can only teach kids to a certain extent, because one of the things I glaringly remember, and I think it's important for a lot of the parents to know this, is that you always remember your parents' contradictions.
Mhm.
They will stick in your head, and you'll be like, I thought this was important, I thought that was important, and they kind of like, some of the contradictions kind of even hurt you because you built up your foundation of your understanding on these things, and when they contradict that, it changes your worldview completely. So I think one of the biggest things as a parent is you have to try and be consistent. And as you know, your child will call you out. You know, I was one. We was. I always tell my son to have patience in it. I always say have patience. You know, take a deep breath. And we was running late for school the other day, innit? And I was like, hurry up, hurry up, hurry up, let's go. And he says, Daddy, I thought we're supposed to have patience. You know, and I comment, and he was right. He was right.
Yeah.
I say to him, take your time, have patience. And he was right. They'll call you out on it, and at that moment, you have to stand in those foundations or those pillars that you're trying to lay. You know, and I bit my tongue. I was like, you know what, you're right. Take your time, and we'll go there. We'll do it safely, and we'll do it correctly.
In those moments, I think it's depending on how you grew up, right? Uh, you may find it hard to apologize to a child or to say sorry to a child or to recognize your faults in front of a child. So in that moment, what did it feel like that? Sometimes, for example, in the Asian community, growing up in the Asian community, it will be like something looked down upon, that you have to apologize to your child for something that you done wrong, which I think obviously you should be able to apologize to a child and recognize your faults in front of them, but that's how you would be kind of expected to behave as an Asian parent, is to not accept that. So I'm not sure if from your community, you said you're from Ghana, right? That if
Yeah.
that's something that, is it like that, and did you battle with that?
Yeah, it's the same in the African community. We come with this like with this kind of hierarchy of that whatever your parents say go, and that you can't correct them, to the point where it's like I've heard stories of people, the children have gone to like apologize to their parents, and and this is families, and instead of the parents being like, I appreciate the apology, here was I in the wrong, the parent will be like, I don't like the way you apologize, get it. You know what I'm saying? But bro, you know, but we have to humble ourselves. My sister was over here. She lives in Morocco. She came over here for the half term. And she brought her boys. She got two boys. No, three boys. Well, I said two boys. She got one. The older one is 16, so I don't call him a boy. He's like
Right.
going into like, you know what I mean. But the youngest, one of the younger one, he 8 year old. So he came down and he said something about himself. He came down and he was like, I'm a monstrosity. Come and he was joking, but I was like, oh, don't call yourself that. And he kind of got upset, and he ran upstairs. He was like, I'm just making a joke. And I had to go up to him, and I went, and he thought I was going to tell him off. I said, you know what? I just wanted to apologize. I didn't know you were making a joke. That was my mistake. Do you understand what I'm saying? I shouldn't have done that. You know what I mean? That was my mistake. And he was like, okay, I don't want to talk to yourself. I said, that's fine. Whenever you're ready to talk to me, brother, he's a kid. He's 8 years old. I said, let me know. And I'll tell you, when he'd first come into the house, because we don't spend as much time together because in Morocco, there was bits of friction like that. But the moment I apologized to him and stuff like that, it shifted the dynamic of our relationship. And my sister even said to me, she goes like, I think he really appreciated that because they're not used to like an adult like
Mm.
validating how they feel, you know. And don't get it twisted, bro. I feel stupid apologizing to an 8 year old. You understand? But I understand that it's only my own insecurity. But that's the right thing to do. I made him feel some way, and I was wrong. Do you understand? So when I do tell him off, if he does something wrong, he understands that it's not coming from a place of superiority. It's coming from a
Yeah.
place of, this time you've done something wrong and you need to be reprimanded or correct. But when I'm in the wrong, I will let you know as well.
Yeah, yeah, they need to be able to see that making mistakes is something that everybody experiences, and that they also need to be able to see how those mistakes are overcome, and everybody it overcomes them in the same way, which is recognizing a flaw and doing their best to overcome it. And if they never see that in an adult, like as if adults are always perfect, when they grow up and they realize that actually adults are not perfect, yeah,
Yeah.
they're just like, whoa, okay, so now let me look back and see how wrong my parents really were and all the things that they
Yeah.
got wrong and why they never
Yeah.
admitted that. So, and it totally like shatters their paradigm. And sometimes, unless if they're not highly emotionally intelligent, they're not going to be able to handle that moving forward.
They're not going to, man. And one of the things my sister was saying, she was like, "You don't shout at your kids," and I said, "Because like," she goes, but they manage to behave. You don't keep on telling them. I said, "They're not perfect. You understand?" But my sister and my mum both said, "I didn't even realize I don't shout at them like that, innit?" But
Right.
I say because I'm someone who's like, I'll communicate with you, innit? But I'm very firm in the things I communicate. So we have rules. We'll talk about it, and if you break that rule or whatever, I'm not gonna shout. You suffer the consequences of that. Do you understand what I'm saying? If you say to me, "Oh," if my son says to me, I call him when I'm trying to think of an example. Okay, you're supposed to eat your food and not watch TV, or you can't watch TV. That's the rule in it. Do you understand what I'm saying? If you try and not eat your food and try and sneak and watch TV, I say, okay, you're not watching TV again for a week, and I'll always stick with whatever I say.
Mm.
This is not a real life example, but I'm saying, but because
Sure.
if you remain firm on your convictions, I find that the children learn to respect your authority more so than if
Yeah.
you try to like enforce it on them all the time.
Yeah.
Like, sometimes my wife will be like, "Oh, let him have a chance." But I say no, because my word is my word. If I say to him something, we stick to it. He can be crying or whatever, but that's the only thing. If I stick to those promises, he knows the consequences are real as well. So then
Yeah.
we operate on that level.
Yeah. And you have to follow through as well, right?
You have to.
Children.
You have to. You
Yeah.
have to. Good or bad, you have to follow through. If I said to him, "Oh, we're gonna read this book when I get home," whether I get home at midnight, if he remembers that, I have to follow through. If I say to him he needs to go to bed at this time, whether it's this time, he has to go. It has to be on both sides.
Yeah. 100%. 100%. And I've just kind of noticed, just thinking about you talking about that right now, that in myself, very early on, I think I had a lot of these things like locked down, like in terms of the kind of following through and the not shouting and having the rules and being very clear with them. And as time has gone on, I feel like I've forgot those foundations and things have become a bit more relaxed in the way that because if my approach to parenting has become more relaxed, which means that I'm not upholding those standards that I used to uphold. Which then, when they act up, I'm thinking to myself, wait, I thought we'd already established these things, but it's like, oh wait, I myself have become lazy with my parenting, so you guys are obviously going to follow through and kind of be lazy in terms of how much you respect the rules and how much you don't
Mm.
respect the rules. So I think there's a constant maybe I'm just thinking on the spot here, but it might require more reflection, but maybe there's a constant kind of reflection we need to make as parents of, are we still holding up the standards that we have set out for ourselves, we have set out for our children? And if things change, and we
Yeah,
make
yeah,
sure that
yeah.
we're going back to that and we're staying the ship correctly again.
Yeah, and at the same time, I guess we've got to make them sustainable for ourselves, isn't it?
Yeah.
Sometimes there's some rules that we have, and I'll be like, I did the most here. You know what I'm saying? But you know what I mean? But at the same time as well, like like whenever if it's like a rule and it's broken, I realize it was too much. I'll say, you know what? I'll say it straight up because my son is 7 now. I can say to him, yo, you know what? Daddy thought that he was going to be able to do this, but I realized that we should do it this way because sometimes, and I'll explain that to him. Do you get what I'm saying? Just so him to know that like these things happen, we fall short, things like that happen in that capacity. I just try to keep the rules sustainable because like you said, it gets harder because outside influences come in as well as they get older, whether it's from media, whether it's from
Yeah.
like friends and stuff. So you find yourself having to constantly re explain to them why these rules are in place and why they make sense and how you'll do. And when you do fall short as well, you have to explain that to them as well. But I'm fortunate, alhamdulillah, my kids are good kids, and my son is like, he's he's quite he can comprehend things quite well, and I think I'm fortunate in that respect.
That's amazing. Just going back to the point of your creativity, so the seed was planted by your father. Do you feel like you're now planting a seed for your children? Do you see in them a level of creativity similar to yours? And do you see them going on that path? Or, is that not something that you're necessarily passing down?
Um, I think the creativity. I think all forms of creativity just stem from perspective. You know, we all see the same thing, and it's just about giving it a different perspective, and that's what makes it creative. You know, when I write a poem, it could be about something we've all seen, but it's just my perspective. So I think I'm definitely trying to impart on them that duality and how they see things. Always try and assess the perspectives. You know, if 1 plus 1 is 2, it doesn't just have to be 1 plus 1. You can say, what if this is one chocolate plus another chocolate, or one Dragon Ball plus another Dragon Ball? Things that really encourage them to like broaden their mindset. And yeah, I mean, I don't particularly see them wanting them to go like into the creative industry, but I want any industry they go into, them to go into it and be creative with it, you know? So whether it's technology, whether it's maths, you know, the world is invented by creativity, and that's really just what I want to encourage. I'm not here to impose any specific path on them. You know what I mean? As long as it's like it's halal, it's good. I don't mind, but I want them to go into that with a level of creativity, if it's finance, chemistry, whatever.
Okay, amazing. Um, I wanted to ask you, you've been quite consistent when it comes to doing your spoken word and other types of media that you put out there. And I remember listening to when you first started doing things like probably 15 years ago, right?
Yeah.
I remember listening to it back then. I was in school back then.
Oh,
And
right.
yeah, so you know,
Wow.
so what is quite amazing to see is the consistency that you've had over the years, despite having children. Because a lot of the guys that I speak to, and they come to me and they ask me for advice, and sometimes I do some like formal coaching programs where I try and help fathers with this, which
Yeah.
is that they've had these ambitious goals before they became fathers, whatever it was. It might be gym goals, it might be religious goals, it might be in career goals, it might be in a certain passion or a hobby that they have, right? There might be like a business that they were pursuing. And then when they had children, many of those things just started getting put on the back burner. And they were like, I don't have the time, I don't have the energy, Shoaib. Like, I've got these kids, it's overwhelming, blah, blah. Do you know what? All I need to do is make my money and be with my kids, and I can't do anything else. And my health is suffering, and my creativity is suffering, and that, and that, and that. So I'm
Yeah.
trying to help them get back on their feet. So it'd be really good to get your perspective on how you stayed consistent through that and you just kept delivering whilst also still being committed to being a father.
You know what? I think that service you're providing is like essential to so many fathers or new fathers, because I can't sit here and say I maintain the consistency. I could honestly say for about a year or two or whatever, I just shut down. You know what I mean? I went insular. Like for about, I felt like I was being productive, but it was like it wasn't, Fortunately for me, like, I was in a position where I could afford to do that. But at some point, like, because this is what I do, this is actually my job, I didn't have no choice but to then get up and be like, what are we gonna do next? You know what I mean? But I definitely would say that it did happen to me. So although I was still doing stuff, I wasn't really as invested the way I could be. There was days where it was like, so I feel like what I really realized was that it's something I'm realizing more as well, is that it never leaves you. That feeling of the things you need to do, they're going to haunt you from now until whenever, in it. So even if you're saying I'll wait till the kids finish or they're older, it will come back to you then, you know what I mean? And then it will be like you to say, why did I spend 16 or whatever years just putting this on the back burner?
Yeah.
So I've kind of decided in myself, it's like when you have to take the extra hours or extra, I'm like, this feeling is never gonna leave me. So it's time to prioritize it now, because later on it will still be burning and I would have wasted even more time outside of it. So I've kind of learned that. And also there's this I think mothers understand it quite well, where it's like your children are going to define you by the accomplishments, not just being a parent. At some point, and as a father, as the man of the house, is the pressure on you to try and be on point or aspire in as many areas as you can, because that's really what's going to raise your children more than the school they go to, all that kind of stuff. Is them, I wake up 5 a.m., go to the gym, like these little things. The children are internalizing that, and I feel like that's really how you raise your children, by sticking true to your values and your things, and then you impart that on them. So I realize I'm doing my sons more of a service by doing that than being like, I've got to spend all day just taking come home. There's more of a service by them seeing me go out there and facing the world.
100%. This is something that, like, the first piece of advice that I give to these fathers is that this is actually part of your fatherhood, is to pursue all of
Mm,
these things, to
yes,
pursue these goals. Obviously, not to the extent that then you become, non-present in your
distant.
children's lives
Yeah,
and it takes
yeah,
over. There's obviously a key indication of when that fine balance sort of gets tipped, right? But
yeah.
point being is you can't leave it completely, because you're losing a part of your fatherhood in that journey. You think that
Exactly.
you're
Yes.
being a good father by leaving those things, but you're not, because you're
Yeah.
actually, it's a detriment to your kids that they can't see their dad go and pursue these things.
Exactly. And you hit the nail on the head. And that's what I slowly realized. I was like, yo, he needs to see me doing these things, and that's what, I'll go outside and, I'll go on like the little tricep dip thing, and he'll be like, look, daddy, I can do push-ups. You know what I mean? Like, for instance, you even having this podcast, like, your children are going to get to an age where they can comprehend and watch it and then be like,
Yeah.
oh, wow, this is how very similar to how, like I said, I watched my father doing all these things, and I was like, oh, you can create these things, you can build these things, because half of the things that we aspire for are the things that we believe are attainable. And it's our parents' job to make us feel like they're attainable.
100%, bro. I really appreciate that. Look, so
Thank you, man.
I mentioned this before we start the podcast. The reason I wanted to sort of bring you on is I came across one of these posts that you mentioned. You were talking about an extract from your book, I believe, and you were answering a question, which is, how did children ruin your relationship? And I found that quite powerful because do you know, why don't you explain for the sake of the people that haven't seen that, and obviously we'll put an
Yeah.
image of the post there, and we'll put your socials there so people can check it out. But why don't you explain what were you talking about, and we can share a few reflections.
I was kind of talking about the dynamic of, like, kind of similar to what you were just touching on, about how when you become a father, you become so consumed with, like, you think your fatherhood is just about standing post and protecting this kid in that little room from everything and shutting out the whole world. And I was talking about how, like, in a sense, I was shut out my wife as well. I was just like, yo, like, this kid needs all my attention now. And in doing that, I kind of neglected myself, my wife, and the whole entirety of the marriage by just trying to focus on keeping this kid like that. And I think that was a projection of insecurity, but also anxiety, etc., etc. So that was the post, like, in a nutshell, from top to bottom.
Yeah, I think that completely resonated. Because me and my wife have had this discussion before where, there's been a lack of intimacy, there's been a lack of just, the joys of you had when you were first getting to know each
Mm.
other, when you first got married, that kind of spark and that joy. And after having children, of course, you can't have that in its entirety in terms of the consistency, because your attention is being taken away by various different things.
Yes.
But what then tends to happen is that you start putting things on a back burner, like you're saying, and you starting to put all your energy into this child, and you forget
Yeah.
that the one who brought you this child, the one that is mothering the child, the one who is in on your team, you're focusing on one team member, you leaving the other team
And
member
love it.
out of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And as a man, you have the responsibility to be able to pour into both of those
Yeah.
individuals, right? And of course, vice versa, the wife has a responsibility to pour into you as well. So I found, me and my wife had that discussion, and to be honest,
Yeah.
I think it's a constant thing, because especially if you're gonna keep having children, it's just like gonna be a constant thing that you come back to. Like, I've got a 6-year-old, a 4-year-old, and then I've got a 5-month-old as well. So it's like,
Oh.
you know, this is every few years, this like constant discussion keeps
Yeah.
coming back. So we're kind of in that
Yeah.
moment again where we're trying to find the moments where we can spend time with each other and show that love and compassion to one another, whilst also giving 3 other kids the attention that they need to be given. And it's very difficult. But I think, for the fathers who are listening, we should take that initiative, right? And take that step and say, do you know what? I do love you, and I do want to spend time with you, and I do think about you, and show them words of affirmation and affection to let them know, actually, you're not being left behind. Because a lot of the times, and anyway, in my experience and maybe other people's experience, they won't make that so clear, or they won't verbalize that they feel like
Yeah.
you're distancing yourself from them. It's a feeling that they feel, and they're hoping at some point things will pass and things will go back to normal. And you kind of have to take that initiative and tell them, hey, actually, I am here, and I'm sorry that I haven't said this, I haven't verbalized this, I haven't actioned this, I haven't shown this within my actions, but I do feel it, and let's make a plan. Let's get get the ball rolling again. And just the act of doing that, even if you haven't done anything practically to kind of put the spark back in, and bring that intimacy back in, just you verbalizing the fact that you're thinking about it and you want it to happen, I think is like a huge thing for the wives and the mothers and the women in the relationship.
100%, bro. Because women are complicated, but at the same time, they're not that complicated when it comes to that. Because one thing my wife will always say to me is like, most women just want to know that you're still thinking about them, you know? And like you said, you may not have to do anything like practically in that regard, but like just knowing that with the household and everything that you guys are going through, like she's still at the forefront of your mind in some capacity.
Yeah.
That's the reassurance that most women just even need to be like, yeah, he's still thinking about me, and I haven't just become like someone who just like looks after his kids or someone who just lives in the house with him, you know. And I think that is one thing that is simple, but it took me a long time to kind of like really comprehend the power of it.
Yeah, 100%. Tell us a bit more about this book. Unfortunately, embarrassingly, I haven't got it and I haven't read it yet. And I will
But he
do.
will get it though. He will
I
get it.
will get it. I will get it, and that's a promise, bro. Inshallah. So can you tell us a bit more about the process of writing this book? And obviously, I've following your work over the years, I've seen how you've dipped in and out of different topics and sort of different types of genres. And so it's interesting to see, like, at this moment in your life, how this book has come by. And I know you've got another book coming out very soon as well. So maybe you can just tell us the process of this one currently that's out, and where you're moving towards as well, inshallah.
Yeah, I think it's an offshoot of the idea that I've always like told my story through like live performance. You know, I actually have an event in June actually. People come through live performance and like bit creative content. I've always wanted to get into like the written medium of expressing stuff, but I didn't want to do it through poetry because I think writing poetry is very different from performing it. So one thing I started doing was I started writing these excerpts on Twitter about like, well, it's X now, but Twitter at the time, about my relationship. And my wife's been saying it from ages, like no one has a man's perspective on relationship. And it kind of just took off. So then that kind of spiraled into having a newsletter. And I was writing a lot for this newsletter. But then the kind of like one thing I'm always into is like entrepreneurship. That's like the foundation of how I see art.
Okay.
And I was like, I'm writing this newsletter, but it's like people read it and then it's out of their inbox a week or two later. You know, they never look at it again. So my head started turning. I've been writing for like 3 years. How do I make this into something that's sustainable? You know, and I spoke to publishers at the time. We had some deals, offers I didn't like them, and so that's where this came from. Was like this was an experiment to see all the ideas I have. Can I get them on paper and can I get them in book format? And what would that look like to the people? So it's just because I was talking about marriage right now. That's why this book, the book you wish you had read before marriage, is like a compilation of essays of the things that I learned in my relationship with my wife. And the next one I'm working on is another compilation of essays that are more about companionship and how couples come together. But then the next one I'm doing after that, inshallah, I feel like I want to start broadening the subject matters. You know, it's interesting we're having this conversation because my friend was like, have you thought about writing about fatherhood? And I was like, bro, the man them ain't gonna read it. But he's like, you'll be surprised, you know? So I think this is just another stage of my career where I'm finding different ways to express the idea. I really want to write something about grief, you know, and then I really want to write stuff about fiction and stuff. So that's the next, just taking advantage of this opportunity where I can go direct to people through self-publishing and kind of just share ideas that are tangible. If I give you a book, you can give that book to someone else and it will mean more than just giving them the link to something.
No, that's beautiful, bro. I think it's amazing. I think when I saw the title and I saw like, okay, yeah, like it's it's such a different perspective to look at. It's not somebody coming in being like a marriage counselor and saying this is
Yeah,
how to fix your marriage. You're coming beforehand. You're saying, you know, let's look at all of this and let's look at my reflections and let's see what you should be kind of thinking about and what you should be exposing yourself to before you even get through the
yeah,
door and you get together. And I think that's really good. It's really powerful. And I think that kind of it's a kind of attitude of prevention is better than cure, right? It's like okay, let's take a step back before we even get into any issues. Let me tell you what could possibly happen. Let me tell you what I'm thinking about, and hopefully, you as a young man, as a young woman who's thinking about getting into a serious relationship, you can start kind of fathoming these ideas and sort of being ready to
yeah.
enter into that arena into the best way. And then obviously you're gonna, like you said, moving forward, going into a book that will be more so for the couples who are already married, and then going further, those who have children, etc. So I think that's a great trajectory, and I think the man them will listen to the fatherhood one, inshallah. Obviously, I haven't completely proven it because my podcast is small, right? But I think I've got what, maybe 1,000 subscribers, so maybe those 1,000 people
Don't
interested.
buy it. If everyone buys a copy, I'll be happy. Alhamdulillah, you know what I mean? But but yeah, no, I think you're right. Do you understand? It's just about like I just want to give honest opinions on this. Like, there's some things that are even embarrassing for me to share, but I just want to give an honest perspective because no one gave it, and I saw the title and I was just like, oh, I saw it from this other book. It was like the book you wish your parents had read or something. And I was like, oh,
Yeah.
what about the one before marriage? And it's funny because I'm still learning because the moment I stop people on the street or sometimes I do that. Oh, you interested in the book? They'll be like, I don't want to get married. I'm not married yet, and I'm like, oh no, it's not just about that, So it's kind of like learning
Exactly.
like different ways to market and sell, etc. But inshallah, yeah, I'm thinking of the fatherhood one. It will be short because, like I said, the men them don't really wanna. Yeah, we'll see. Maybe I might explore it.
Yeah, definitely. I saw one of the posts that you put out. You said that the man sometimes he needs a break, and it's not necessarily that he's got the divorce papers tucked in the glove box, right? I think it'd be really good to explore this because majority of the listeners are obviously going to be guys, men, dads, and they're probably
Yeah,
going to resonate with that post, I think. And I think it's
yeah,
something that they've probably been thinking in their heads for a long time of how do I express this feeling inside of me to my wife, because I don't want to come across like I'm burdening her, or I'm saying like I don't I don't like you anymore, or I've got the divorce papers. It's not even that. It's not got to that stage. Is it? The guy loves his family, he loves his wife, he loves his children, but he's just feeling overwhelmed and he doesn't know how to express that. So it'd be really good to explore that one.
yeah. No, bro. It's funny because when I posted that, my wife was like, "Okay, you trying to tell me something, innit?" And I was like, "But I told you this, like, I told you this, like, because I think it is that thing of like I think men equally we're very simple in it. Sometimes we just want to like chill off and relax in it, but it's hard to do that sometimes without the wheels turning in the woman's head, thinking, "What have I done wrong? How has
Yeah,
he hurt this situation? Is he, And I tried to tell my wife, like, although we're my wife, not every single problem in my life revolves around you in it, and that's not a bad thing. You need to learn to accept that sometimes I'm dealing with things away from this marriage or in this relationship that are like that you can't help with, and that's not a bad thing as well. Sometimes women get frustrated when they feel like they can't help with man's problem, but you have to trust him as the man to go through that process and resolve it, and just give him the space to do it. And this is kind of like why I love the gym, because at this point, I think most people, you get to the point where you don't even go to the gym for the gains. You go there just to give yourself that
yeah,
mental clarity to kind of like push through, go for a jog, go for a run, just to kind of like recalibrate yourself. And I think sometimes we have to communicate to our partner and say straight up, yo, I have I just need to clear my head. It's got nothing to do with you, yeah. Let me just, and I kind of reassure my wife a lot of the time. I just be like, yeah, no, it's nothing to do with you. I just need to sort this thing out. You know what I mean?
mm,
And she'll be like, can I help? I said, if you can, I'll let you know. but this has got nothing to do with you. I just need like to think about things, you know. I just need to give me time. And it's not even a thing where it's like you need to go anywhere or leave the house. You just need that space, maybe at night or something like that. I
Yeah.
think everyone needs it, you know.
Yeah. What could you like maybe practically tell the guys that they can do to communicate that with their spouses? Like many of them may feel like if they say something, it might cause an issue, it might cause a problem, but they, they genuinely need that break and they want to make sure that they're expressing it in the right way.
Yeah, and the reality is, what I say is, the first time it will cause a problem, the second time it will cause a problem. But if you always come back to the situation, expressing it, and then say, "Yo," because one thing you can say to your wife, "This is what was on my mind. I figure about blah blah blah. Now I'm cool now, or now I'm easy, or this was stressing me out." As I've got older, I've become more transparent about being like, "This is what my issue was." You know, and I think we don't communicate that resolution enough, because I think the biggest fear is like, what if he goes away and never comes back to me? And I
Yeah.
think if every time you come back and reassure with that, like me, I'm very upfront about those things. It really, really helps. But I'm not gonna lie to you. The first time, it's not gonna go down well. Second time, it probably. But when you start to do it consistently and stand on business with it, and
Yeah.
she starts to understand that, oh, maybe it's nothing to do with me. You know, as long as you're still like communicating with her, showing the affection, she'll start to realize that. You know, because sometimes a man might be sitting there playing PlayStation, and that's his like. That's how he clears his mind. You know, that's how he
Yeah.
has his like. But if if you have a partner that doesn't share that same experience or whatever, she may feel like, what, does he just hate the family? Does he want to be away from us? So you got to communicate that.
Yeah, 100%. All right, that's beautiful advice, but I really appreciate that. And I think on that note, bro, we've hit 12 o'clock and I think we've had gem after gem from you. Really do
Oh, I'm
appreciate your
glad. I'm
time,
looking
bro.
forward to it. I'm looking forward to
It's
listening
been
back, man.
amazing, to be honest. And I'm really glad that you accepted our invite. Hopefully, you can accept another invite soon. We always try to get guests back on for second times and to
Yeah,
kind of reignite another discussion and reflect upon our first one. So it'd be really good to
yeah.
have
You
you
need
on.
to do a link up, bro. Like with everyone that's like, you know, all the fathers and that. You need to do something like that.
100%. That's something I've been thinking about for so long. Like, can I organize some sort of retreat? Can I organize just some sort of simple link up? Bring your kids, organize something where we can just let the
Simple,
kids play and
yeah.
let the fathers talk, whether that's a park, whether that's like a soft play center, something like that.
You need to,
I've been
man.
thinking
Yeah.
about that for a while. So definitely, a lot of people tell me this is a, can you organize something like this? You obviously got a network of dads, especially around London. So there was one time it was gonna happen actually, and then I can't remember. There was a few issues, and then we cancelled it. So we'll try and reignite that as soon as possible,
You
inshallah.
should, man. Yeah, just a small thing, bro. Even if it's like, you know, even if you don't have to, even if it's not a big location, you know, even if it's a
Yeah,
small place where everyone can just sit down, eat, whatever. Even if it's
yeah,
like a restaurant, you know what I mean? Like, you definitely got to do it, man. Because I feel like the conversation we're having right now, I have it in small pockets, but
yeah,
like those are all with people I already know. You know, you don't
yeah,
really get external experiences from other people like that.
yeah, 100%. I think that does need to happen, and people need to see other dads and other upcoming fathers need
To
to
be
see that
exactly.
there's guys out there that will chat about this and will be willing to give their experiences out, inshallah. All right, bro. With that being said, can you just end the podcast by telling
I
everyone
will.
where they can find out more about yourself, about your books upcoming, and anything else, inshallah, that you'd like to share?
Yeah, everything you can find it on sulibreaks.com. I'm most active on Instagram, Suli Breaks, but you can also see me on YouTube. If you just type in my name, SULIBREAKS, and join the newsletter, please.
Yeah, 100%. Check it out. I've been listening to your stuff for a long time and always benefiting. So I think people should
Appreciate
definitely
it.
listen and read. There's one thing I forgot to ask you. I know you need to leave,
What's that?
but there's literally one last thing, which is,
Go
can you
ahead,
tell
go ahead.
me uh, the most fond memory that you've had with your two sons? That could have been something that literally happened last week, yesterday. It could be something that happened a few years ago. Just something that pops into your mind, like, okay, that was funny or that was fun.
Oh man, I feel like every day there's like something new. Let me think. What is like? I think there's different ones with them individually, which makes it a bit difficult, you know.
Yeah.
But one collectively, I think we just came. We went to Ghana, you know what I mean?
Wow.
And 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 when we went to Ghana, I wanted them to go because it's their great grandma, but it's my grandma, innit? You know, so we got to go and he went to meet her, you know, my sons got to see her, you know, and shortly after last year, she passed, innit? So it's kind of like that memory, you know, is like ingrained in me because it was so important for me that they got to meet her and she got to meet them, you know, and obviously she was coming up to 90, you know, she lived a long life, but that was a big memory for me, man. That always stick with me. It will always stick in my heart, you know, because it was something that I knew was important to me. And we thank Allah, like, I got the opportunity to do it when it mattered the most, you know.
Yeah, that's beautiful, man. That's beautiful. Really appreciate you sharing that. And thanks for joining me on the podcast. Take care. Assalamu
No
alaikum.
problem. All right. So, wa alaikum salam. Take care, bro.
Alright guys, so if you enjoyed that video, please do subscribe and follow me on TikTok and Instagram for more dad related content. Check out some of my previous videos and look forward to the next ones.